speaking of franchise cornerstones, I guess obviously with the trade for Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns earlier in the year, Mikal Bridges was one of the pieces that got brought over to the Brooklyn Nets, and ever since that point, he's been a revelation. He's in 27 games. He obviously played 27, but he didn't really play the 27th game. He checked in for a few seconds just to get the 83 game mark. But in the 26 games that he played in a proper stanza, he ended up averaging 27.2 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.8 assists on 47% from the field, 37.6% from three, and nearly 90% from the free-throw line. He was an absolute revelation. He averaged more points per game than Kevin Durant after the trade deadline, or after the trade actually took place. So the question I pose is, will the Suns regret trading Mikal Bridges for Kevin Durant? And what is his ceiling going forward? So for me, before I pass it on to you, I believe, in my opinion, I think anytime you get the opportunity to trade for Kevin Durant, you got to take that chance. And if you want to win the title, it's obviously going to be vindicated. And if you do end up winning the title, it'll be vindicated, I should say. And the details of the trade won't be analysed in too much detail. But if they don't win, and they've given up assets, especially with the ascension of Mikal Bridges since the trade's been made, the durability is shown. Obviously 83 games this season. He's played like 390 odd games in a row. It might be something they look back on heavily with regret, especially since Bridges is a two-way player, 3-and-D guy with superstar potential now that he's obviously shown. And another thing is obviously with the durability side of it, Kevin Durant has been very unavailable lately. You know, the Achilles injury, then he had the knee problems. He slipped over in warm-ups, twisted his ankle. A lot of things like this obviously are question marks. Obviously, when he's on the court, and when he's on the court with guys like CP3, Devin Booker, and the like, DeAndre Ayton, they've been potent. This team looks dangerous. This team looks like no one could stop them. So I think as long as they're on the court and they're healthy, I believe that they won't regret the trade, and they won't rue the decision they made. But in my opinion, I think that Mikal Bridges, being at the age that he is at 26 and the signs that he's showing, I think there are signs that point to that direction to say that, well, there could be a regret, especially given that they gave up an additional 4 unprotected future first-round picks as well. So this is an interesting one, but again, a title almost always makes you forget all the stuff that happened before that, and everything that they gave up will all be worth it if they hold up the chip at the end of the season. But I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah. So for me, I think James Jones and the Phoenix Suns, they knew what they were getting themselves into by getting KD. But obviously, if they win a championship, it's worth it. Like, to win a championship, the ultimate goal, what every NBA team wants, I guess, to achieve, is it to win an NBA championship. So on that perspective, yes, they won't regret giving up Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson or any of these guys, all the picks, because a title's a title, and it would go down in franchise history, and it would be great for KD's legacy, Chris Paul's legacy. But in terms of Mikal Bridges' potential and what he could bring to a franchise for, I guess, a decade, maybe they do a little bit. If they don't win that ring, they do a lot, because he has all-NBA potential. He's an Iron Man. The guy doesn't miss any games. And I think with his ceiling going forward, I really do think he could be a 20-point-plus scorer for an entire decade, and he brings the defensive energy every night. So, I mean, every team could use a guy like Mikal Bridges, and he just seems like a good locker room guy as well. So that's always a plus.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we both summed it up pretty well there, and I guess we'll find out how this all plays out, not only at the conclusion of this season, when we see who obviously wins the Larry O'Brien trophy as the NBA champions, but also going forward and seeing how many more years Kevin Durant sticks around with the Phoenix Suns, and whether that experiment was only short-lived if they all decide to break up after a failed championship run this season. So it'd be very, very interesting indeed. But moving on to another...
Yeah, look, it is. I'll just make a quick point about the Suns real quick. It is, but at the same time, it's kind of do or die for them, I feel, because Chris Paul obviously has come to the end of his career, and you got KD there with Aiden and Book, but there's questions whether Aiden wants to be there. And then maybe if Chris Paul leaves, I heard rumours they would go after Maxey. I don't know how legit it is, but if so, then no. And they have Maxey, KD with Book and Aiden. That's insane. But yeah, it's do or die for Phoenix. So I really do think maybe both ways. They lose Mikal and KD. You never know. He could have an injury-rattled end to his career, and then, hey, that's kind of screwed. But you got to make sacrifices to contend for championships. So on that front, I can't really blame him.
Yeah, you look at teams like this, they did everything they could to try and win a chip, especially knowing that.
Yeah, you got to respect it.
Whereas you look at teams like Portland, they just too scared to pull the trigger on certain things, and that obviously has resulted in them being at that point where they make the playoffs year after year in the past, and they just couldn't get over the hump because they just didn't make the right moves for the right pieces. So again, you got to respect Phoenix for it. It's very risky, it's very ballsy, but at the end of the day, we're not going to know whether it was a successful decision until we see the end of the NBA season when the finals are all concluded and we see who lifted the trophy.